This is another Infosol production. Fossil Rod.
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music.
Now to a Fox 5 exclusive. DC's police chief and victims' families were outraged to learn some DC judges are releasing murder suspects back into the community while they're still awaiting trial. Fox 5 has found 17 cases where the suspect was released, and the DC Superior Court is defending its judges' actions. Fox 5's Paul Wagner is live tonight with the story. Paul?
Hey there, Sean. DC Police Chief Peter Newsham is so troubled by the judge's decisions, he wants the public to know about it. He says 16 of those 17 cases are murders involving a firearm, and he's calling it, quote, a very, very serious public safety issue in which the government is not keeping people safe. And he's not alone. Victims' families are weighing in as well. In September of 2004, Kendra Smith was sitting in a car outside her southeast home when she was shot and killed. A murder that remained unsolved for 14 years until a new detective took up the case and got a warrant for Tony Aiken, a man who admitted being in the car with Smith that night and spent 17 days in jail before he was released, a decision that shocked Kendra's mom.
It was a kick in the face, it was a kick in the gut, and I felt it. I actually felt that. I never really understood it. From everything that I knew, I've always been told that if a person was arrested for murder, no bond, no bail.
In searching court records, we also found the 17-year-old accused of killing 16-year-old Dominique Franklin inside a vacant apartment in Southwest back in August was released last month, the judge putting Juwan Simpson into what's called high-intensity supervision, where he's required to wear a GPS ankle bracelet 24 hours a day. In another case, a 16-year-old charged and indicted with 10 others in the 2018 murder of 10-year-old Micaiah Wilson has also been released. Markel Cobbs, who was 16 at the time of his arrest, was also placed in the high-intensity supervision program last May.
Having somebody go back into the community after they've been presented in the court and the courts have determined that there's probable cause, it shows the community that these folks go back to that the government is not keeping them safe. That's one of my major concerns.
Chief Newsham says another major concern is possible witness intimidation.
If you feel like this is appropriate for our city, you should be able to weigh in on that personally. As the chief of police, I think it has going to have a serious negative impact on public safety, gun violence in particular.
But defense attorney David Benowitz says the law is clear and has been for nearly 30 years.
This is not a new phenomenon, and my response to the police chief would be, make better cases. This is not some new development in the law. It's not some new development in criminal investigation. This is pretty basic judicial decision making. And it's really an assessment of cases that usually is not too complex.
In another case involving the murder of a 15-year-old on Half Street Southwest, the judge reversed the decision to release and ordered Javon Gunter back to jail. Now, we asked Robert Moran, the chief judge of Superior Court, for a comment, and he released this statement, which reads in part, there are many considerations that go into a judge's decision to detain a person who's presumed innocent, including whether the accused has a criminal record and whether there is strong evidence of guilt at the time the decision is being made. Sean?
You can certainly understand the police and those families being frustrated with all this. So, Paul, just to be clear, the attorney you mentioned, is the law clear on this? What did he mean by that?
Sure. He's talking about the D.C. Bail Reform Act, which Judge Moran also cited in his statement to Fox 5. He says the law does not permit a judge to detain a person with no prior convictions charged with murder solely upon a finding of probable cause. Any suggestion to the contrary is wrong on the law. People may have differing opinions about judges' decisions, but our democratic system depends on an independent judiciary that is free to make difficult decisions according to the law and not be influenced by criticism from others, including by public officials, which, as you know, Sean, is happening right now, where the chief is criticizing the judges.
And they're still facing murder charges, right?
Yeah, to be clear, all 17 are still facing murder charges. They're just out waiting for their trials to begin.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back now with Mindy Walker, who is the chair of the DC GOP in Ward 8. It is a tremendous pleasure and blessing to have you with us tonight. Mindy, you watched that particular video that earlier this year judges were releasing murderers onto the streets with threats of witness intimidation being considered and being disavowed. You also know that the mayor has released murderers and rapists upon the streets in her proclamation that she is trying to keep those individuals from getting COVID in the prisons. However, people who refuse to wear a mask can be threatened to go to prison. And then lastly, the Second Look Act has been induced upon the American people here in the District of Columbia with the threat of releasing 583 individuals onto the streets, and violent offenders, rapists, and murderers who happen to be under the age of 25. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to those particular things that you've heard and whether they concern you as the chair of the DC GOP in Ward 8.
All of it disturbs me greatly. These issues are revolving around so many different policies that might not even be constitutional. I think starting with COVID, while I understand that is kind of under the guise of compassionate release, we also know that it's mainly, like, deaths are primarily those who are elderly and immunosuppressed. So if you are a younger offender, the likelihood that you would die with COVID is what, 0.05%?
Exactly.
So I feel like that is not a good reason to release violent criminals out on the streets when they haven't served the time that, going back to the quote of the last individual on that clip, is just, it's terrible public policy, and she shouldn't have considered that because there's no basis for the compassionate release. If this were the plague, it would be a different situation, but it's not. For younger, healthier individuals, some people don't even know that they have COVID. So I think that's a terrible reason to release people on the streets. But again, going back to Mayor Bowser, I don't see her on the streets of Ward 8. I don't see members of the DC Council, including Treyon White, on the streets of Ward 8, unless there's a photo opportunity. I think that this year in particular, outside of COVID-19, was the outrage of alleged police brutality when it came to, it started with George Floyd. Yes. But he was on, he had he took a deathly dose of fentanyl and died of those causes. It was not a result of him being held by the police.
That's correct.
But what I don't see in Ward 8 is 4 funerals for Carmelo Duncan, who died here in my neighborhood on December 2nd, this gorgeous 18-month-old baby who didn't even have a chance to live. He didn't have a chance to thrive, was murdered, and they don't know who killed this poor baby. They said it was, likely a deliberate attack on his father. But where are the people in the streets demanding action on this murder? Where's BLM? Where is our government? We have Black Lives Matter painted near the White House, but we don't have individuals here caring about these babies who are being killed every year. This is not an isolated case.
Yes.
Last year, there was a preteen who was murdered by a 27-year-old adult because they got into a disagreement over who could sell drinks on the side of the road. And
Exactly.
here, our council, our local government is all about releasing those criminals so that then they can go out and murder other innocent individuals.
Exactly. You mentioned earlier
It's
Charles Allen, who's a council member from Ward
yes.
6. And you mentioned the fact that he has included within this particular Second Look Act the opportunity of over 583 murders and rapists being released upon the streets. Most of those particular crimes happen to happen in your neighborhood in Ward 8. Most of the criminals that per chance do those crimes happen to be in Ward 8. And every year, Muriel Bowser has come up with a crime initiative. And I must say this, the DC City Council is for releasing hardened murderers and rapists onto the streets. The judges in the District Superior Court are okay with releasing murderers and rapists onto the streets. But it's the police and the police chief who were against it, and the police chief is gone. I want to get your thoughts in terms of that.
I would just like to say, God bless every single Metropolitan Police officer, especially in District 7, which is the most dangerous district,
Oh my God,
which
yes.
is my district. They, just to give you some background on that, they are compensated at the same level as police officers who are downtown, who don't have to deal with as much crime, who are in Georgetown, etc. So they're out here, they're being disrespected at every single corner, every single opportunity. The council wants to take money away from them. At least Muriel Bowser did step up to kind of say, let's wait a minute, let's not get too hasty. Their pay, actually the police department's pay is held to a lower standard. They're not paid according to the work that they do and the populations that they serve, because we don't have 1 million residents, but we have upwards of 15 million people in the city pre-COVID every day for work and business and travel. But they're held to the pay of the suburbs.
Yeah.
So they're not being paid like, south side of Chicago police officers or Los Angeles police officers or other police officers who are put in the same amount of danger that these individuals are. They're paid less, they're disrespected more. And as we saw, there were some stories over the weekend from the MAGA rally that some individuals were angry at the police, but the police have their hands tied. They're amazing, wonderful people who are doing God's work out there. And at every term they're just disrespected, and they can't do what they want, what they personally feel is right, because they are pigeonholed by our government.
Exactly. They have been told to stand down by Mayor Muriel Bowser, that it's okay for Black
Exactly.
Lives Matter and Antifa to riot, to loot, and to burn down buildings. But if a Trump supporter protects himself, you darn near better arrest him. There seems to be a definite two-tiered system of justice in America when it comes to the District of Columbia. If you are pro-rioting, looting, and defamation of character, it's okay. If you are believers in a strict constitutional justice, then you are the problem. When you have as many poor, because when you look at the statistics for Ward 8, nearly 60% of those people in Ward 8 are considered under the middle income line here, somewhere in the area of less than $100,000 for a family. You have 35% that make up the poverty line in this particular area, meaning that they make less than $35,000 a year. You have an extreme amount of poverty and lack of economic development to create jobs, but they tell you the Democrat Marxists tell you that in order to stop the homicides, you have to create jobs. Why is it that this whole idea of reducing crime does not include economic development east of the river?
Well, I know that there's been a lot of lip service paid by the mayor about development over here across the river. Um, but just the culture here. Um, there are a lot of good people. I love my neighbors personally, but the community on this side of the river is held to the lowest standards. I think our government has gotten them hooked on government programs to where even if there were the opportunity for jobs and job creation, that that a lot of them wouldn't take advantage of that because, even individuals who are intelligent and want to work recognize that they could make less working, or they could stay at home and have maybe a lower standard of living, but they get to keep uh, the benefits that they're provided, because it's not just subsidized housing, it's food stamps, SNAP, it's WIC, it's welfare. And although a lot of these programs are supposed to be short term, they found loopholes where they keep it's cyclical and it's keeping the community down.
Yes.
And no one is looking at a way to do more of a hand up to these individuals where they get assistance while they're working so they can get the skills where they're not just in low skilled work, where they can move up and they can bring their families out of the darkness. But we just don't see that willingness. Our government wants to hold them down and then bring the rapists and murderers back into the communities. What we're showing them is, hey, it's no big deal. Join a gang, sell some drugs, and the DC government will just let you out of jail early because you did it before you were 25.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's
2 years ago, over 2,000 individuals were arrested for carrying an illegal gun, meaning it wasn't registered. And they were out on the streets in 24 hours. Literally, you're letting the same people back into the communities. And there are some that believe that the Democrat Marxists are doing this on purpose in terms of a compassionate gentrification, forcing the poor people out of Ward 8 and out of Ward 7 into the suburbs to replace them with people that can own million-dollar homes. Do you believe that that's happening?
I don't think it's happening here yet, but I think it is the next area that will be gentrified to that level, because it's prime real estate.
Yeah.
We are waterfront property. I mean, I was born in this area, but when I came back professionally after college, we wouldn't go south of 395.
Yeah.
Now it's Navy Yard, and you can't get a tiny apartment for less than $3,000 a month. So I do kind of see that coming, and I think it is kind of a disservice to the community because the culture here is so rich in history.
Yeah.
I live in the Douglas part of 8, named for Frederick Douglass, who was he was a founder of the DC Republican Party and a storied resident of Ward 8. There's a deep Jewish heritage actually in Ward 8. This used to be a Jewish community. And I think that we can make things nicer without making it so the people don't have a place to live in DC. But I don't think that the answer is to give it to them. I think that earning a place is far more important, because then you respect the community. People are neighbors rather than just residents. They're citizens who care for their community, and we can't do that right now because it's so dangerous. I mean,
Exactly.
The District 7 police station on Alabama Avenue, a lot of people get shot in their parking lot. They're not even afraid to shoot each other in front of the police department.
Yeah,
So we
that's very
can't we
true.
can't do that.
Exactly. Now,
Um,
I got to ask you here,
mhm.
the Second Look Act also includes a provision called Title One, which is a red flag law that basically states that anybody anonymously can conjecture that you are mentally sick, and the police have to come and take your guns while they determine judicially, not medicinally and not psychologically, but judicially, if you are mentally sick, which basically separates the individual who is falsely accused from his Second Amendment rights. I want to get your thoughts on that as you award a DC GOP chair. Are you in favor of the red flag law?
I am wholeheartedly against any red flag law. It's not rooted in any evidence, and it can be turned into more of a politically motivated um, provision.
Yes.
I myself admit that I am a lawful gun owner, and actually, a huge problem that I have in the city is that you're preventing citizens who don't have a criminal history from being able to protect themselves, their homes, and their families. But it's easy to get a gun unlawfully. I can't tell you the process to receive a short arm is just ridiculous in the city. And the one person who previously was kind of the intermediary, where you have to purchase a gun outside of DC, and then you do all of your paperwork, you get your background check, then the gun store has to send it to DC so that someone can hold the box for you when you when you go in to to lawfully register your handgun. And in addition to that, I think it was somewhere around a $300 fee just so that that individual, and who has since quit, so now they don't even have
Exactly.
a
You have to
good
go through the
process
police
for it.
department to actually get your gun now.
Exactly.
You have to go through the police to get your gun. It would be easier to be a criminal on the street behind the 7-Eleven where you can get your gun for about $50, without all the registration. That's what you call free market. But you're opposed to Second Look in terms of Title One. Are you also opposed to Second Look in terms of Title 12? Regarding the release of 583 hardened felons under age 25 onto the streets.
Absolutely. While I did support the president's overarching
Yes.
criminal justice reform because it was sound, there were different issues that had to be met before you could qualify for that. I am wholeheartedly against this bill in its entirety because it only benefits the evildoers.
Yes.
It
Now,
does not help the community.
doesn't it all? Will we be hearing from the Republican Party, because it's easier to put a camel through the eye of a needle than to hear from the DC Republicans on matters such as this? Will we be hearing formally from the Republican Party on this before they consider the bill?
If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't believe so. One of the issues that I brought when I joined the party was criminal justice reform and safety issues and supporting our police. And I think that there are a lot of us that believe that we need to get some fresh blood in there and be more active on city issues. And I'm just speaking for myself. I am prepared to do what I can, especially as a duly elected official in the city. But I don't see a formal response from the DC GOP.
Mindy, we appreciate the fact that you're on the air with us tonight. This won't be the last time I call upon you, because you are the type of robust and nouveau energy needed to express truth and justice to the American people in the District of Columbia. We've been waiting for you for over, home rule, 76. We've been waiting for you since 1976. And we're so glad that you are a part of the District of Columbia's GOP. It is a voice that's necessary and eminent as well. How can people in Ward 8 who don't see themselves as pro-Joe Biden, the racists, who don't see themselves as pro-DC GOP, Democrat Marxist light, how can people get with you and build a strong Ward 8 DC GOP?
Absolutely. Actually, I think one of the best ways is to find me on Facebook. I have some friends and I that have created a new kind of platform for individuals who are conservative in the city. They don't have to be Republicans. You don't have to have a label. It's more about the principles of freedom and supporting our republic and loving our country. And I think, a lot of the initiatives that we wanted to start before COVID, we can't, especially due to Mayor Bowser's limitation of 10 people per event. But we'll be coming out soon, and we're going to be more robust. A lot of our members have been present at the rallies, and we're energized. So I think there are ways to go about business without having to go through a political machine or belonging to a particular party. So I would greatly encourage anyone to reach out to me on social media and kind of join in the cause. And it's open to anyone in the DMV area. Although we are the DC conservatives, but of course, it's a tri-state area and we're all a tight-knit community.
Exactly. It's a lot of people who have been looking forward to some fresh air, not only east of the river, because I know a lot of Republicans and conservatives here, or people who are very conservative in their values, who didn't want to join the DC Republican Party because it caters to certain constituencies that are more adapt to being a part of the Democrat Marxist society. So we are so thankful for you and your comments this particular night. We look forward to your return on the network very, very soon. God bless you and have a very, very good evening.
Thank you. God bless you as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, this is the type of leadership that's been missing in the District of Columbia. Someone who's not afraid from the other side of the fence to say that this is a screwed up process that's going to terrorize communities and cause great havoc and harm upon the streets of the District of Columbia, where over 200 murders will take place this year. We are on pace to cross that this weekend. It's 192, I believe. If not, I'll check before I come back. It may be upwards to 197 murders to date in the District of Columbia. That's your District of Columbia, and that is with the fact that we've been in COVID lockdown since March. And in addition to that, we've been told that Muriel Bowser's criminal initiatives have worked. Just ask her last two police chiefs, Kathy Lanier and Peter Newsham, if any of her proposals have ever worked. And oh, by the way, Muriel Bowser, 395 South this way is Ward 7 and 8. Come on over when you have a few moments away from cozying up with Joe Biden in Delaware without a mask. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, with more of the best right after this.
Enjoy.
This is another Infosol production.
LA Police Chief Michael Morris sent an unusual apology letter to all LAPD officers. It's a response to a pair of officer surveys that show falling morale and growing frustration about the leadership of the department and the city. Our investigative reporter Eric Leonard has a copy of this letter, and he spoke with the chief one-on-one tonight.
I've got their back, and I'm doing everything I can to support them.
LAPD Chief Moore tells the I-Team he sent this internal message to officers that he didn't intend to become public that says, "There are things I wish I could go back in time and do over, but life doesn't work that way. When one falls short, you get back up and strive to do better. That's my commitment." He's talking about things he did and did not say over the summer in response to the public demonstrations and demands for more significant police reform. The chief's letter followed the publication of this survey of officers by their union that showed some 90% said they'd retire now if they could. 86% said they felt unsupported by the chief.
I know their heart is the biggest organ on their body. They're just trying to do the right thing. And as they're going out there, they feel beat up, they feel vilified.
Moore knew for months about widespread discontent in the department. The I-Team has learned back in July, the LAPD conducted an internal survey that showed many officers thought the chief had not defended the LAPD's reform efforts nearly enough, and it included complaints that there were too many commanders lacking experience. Moore says he tried to address that in the letter and says the coming months will be more difficult with the impact of a $150 million defunding decision by the city council and other untold coronavirus-related budget cuts.
I'm proud to be their chief, and again, my effort was to say that and communicate it and to demonstrate some heart and sincerity in it.
The I-Team spoke with a number of LAPD officers who read the chief's note. They didn't want to be identified, but they said they thought the letter was heartfelt and genuine, though a couple of months late. Hundreds of officers have begun the process of retirement, many of them planning to leave their careers long before they initially planned. And some we've spoken with say their perception over the summer that the chief and the city wouldn't stand behind them is what pushed those officers to get out early. I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News.